Welcome back to Third Phase of Moon. Blake Cousins here. We got a special report for you, along with a special guest. Michael Shratt, military aerospace historian, is with us. But before we get to him, we wanted to go over what happened last night in regards to the video that we uploaded and shared to the world in regards to what was going on in the Czech Republic. Some kind of triangular shaped craft was spotted, and we received some information from the person, the original uploader, and we're in right now some communication. So we're going to hopefully clear things up of exactly what happened in the Czech Republic and break down what was behind it. Could it be the infamous TR-3B, or was it a massive hoax? Again, we're on the front line of the information, so sometimes we bring it to you as fast as possible, and then we find out shortly afterwards of what it could be. And in some cases, we're dealing with the people on the ground, and that's what we're doing right now. We're trying to confirm exactly what it is. And right now, the original uploader says he's got some information, but right now, keep it on the down low. So that's why we removed it. He asked us to remove it, which is pretty cool. He gave us a heads up, so that's good. But again, we're in communication. Hopefully we could bring you the exact news of what happened in the Czech Republic. Now, let's get to Michael Shratt. He has his new YouTube channel, and it's blowing up right now. And let's get him up to 5,000 subscribers. Let me tell you, Blue Room Media is bringing it to the table. A lot of historical evidence with graphic art and representations of these events through historical archives and investigations by Michael Shratt. He's not just bringing you the artwork to represent just these cases. He's bringing you the history behind it, the news articles, the eyewitness reports, the sketches from the eyewitnesses themselves. Comprehensive investigation work what Michael Shratt's doing right now, and we're really happy to be in close collaboration in launching his new channel called Blue Room Media, and he is bringing it to the table. When we work on these episodes, let me tell you, it's really amazing. We don't know what to expect. He's got thousands and thousands of these cases through this hard work and dedication in this field. Michael Shratt, thanks for joining us from Santa Barbara, California.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. And I want to say a special thank you to both of you for helping me put these things together. I couldn't do it without you guys. So thank you very much.
Well, it's our pleasure. You know, we spoke for a few months. I think we've known you for years now, but we said, Michael, you've got the information. You got to get it out. And finally, you've opened up this Blue Room Media channel. It's really important that you're doing this, and I applaud you finally bringing this, because I know you've been doing a lot of work. Tell us a little bit on how you've come across these archives and what got you started from the very, very beginning.
Yeah, sure. This all really started when my dad took me to something called Victory Air Museum. This is just outside Chicago. And what they had there is they had these old warbirds just parked out in the field. You know, you can imagine grass was growing up into the wheel wells, the tires were flat, the paint was chipped, all the windows were opaque, and it just had this ghostly appeal, like you'd see a B-26 laying out there, or a PBY Catalina, and it just had this strange, ghostly, derelict, dilapidated, mysterious aura about it. That's what began my love of aviation. This is like 6 years old, really early on. And from that point forward, it's just been a lifelong crusade. And then eventually, the whole aerospace research and UFO research, it all kind of bled together. And that's really how it all started for me. And just started going to these research centers like QFOS in Chicago, David Marler Collection, going to the Gray Barker Collection in Clarksburg, West Virginia, research areas around the country, and not just going on the internet and then Monday morning quarterbacking all this, but actually going to these centers, setting up an appointment, and sometimes you have to wear these white gloves. I mean, this is real world research here, and pulling out the files. And when you find a file that has a 3-page report that has a drawing or a sketch and then has a flight path map, those are the ones that I would copy. And from that point, I do kind of a SolidWorks drawing of it. I burn a 3D image, a full color image, and then if it got to the point where it was beyond my capabilities, I would commission professional artists like Tom Bogan to do the artwork, and that's what you see the result that we're putting together.
Yeah, and that's what's fascinating, because you're doing the follow-up to the historical sketches from the people themselves that saw it back in the historical time. But what's kind of cool is that you have Tom Bogan, along with other people, doing these really amazing representations from the eyewitness, and that costs a lot of money. Let me tell you, this isn't cheap what you're doing. When I'm watching these episodes, Michael, what you're putting out of your work and the investment that you're putting into these presentations of the historical archive and the evidence behind it, this isn't cheap, and you're giving it to the people for free on YouTube. This is amazing to me.
I'm just as curious as everybody else on this. But what I want to do is when I see these things, you start thinking in your mind, what would this look like if it was in beautiful full color rather than these obscure pencil sketches? Let's make it come alive. Let's put the eyewitnesses at the scene so we can actually get a feel of what this thing looks like. That's what I have endeavored to try to do.
When I'm looking at these representations, it brings back memories of our encounters as children, as well as all the encounters we've heard from tens of thousands of people over the years right here at Third Phase of Moon. And I got a feeling other people are feeling the exact same thing when they're watching these basically reenactments through this visual retelling of the story. But there's so many people that I see in the comments that it brings back the memories, and it's so embedded in our minds that it recalls this flash memory of the encounter with the phenomenon.
So what do you two gentlemen foresee for 2022 here? Do you feel that we're approaching a precipice with disclosure here? Is there a sort of mystique or aura in the air here? Are we rapidly approaching a major event in our field? What's your thoughts?
Well, I got to say that there will be a major event, and I'm glad you asked this because you're part of it too, Michael, that and it's not a plug, but we are releasing our new documentary, Above Top Secret, the technology behind disclosure. And there's been a lot of rumbling in the field of ufology over the past few months, and it's heating up. But hopefully, when we drop this documentary, people will get mad, in my opinion. They should be very angry in regards to the suppression of technology that is in our possession. We're trying to prove it. Can we prove it? It's really tough battle, isn't it, Michael, to try and prove that?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
It's hard to prove that there is a suppression. Maybe this is all we got. Elon Musk is the top form of technology in regards to propulsion, getting to space, NASA. But I gotta think that there's something else out there, especially with all these historical accounts.
Well, we've looked at the cases, right? If you go back, how many cases have we seen? 1966, 1967, where these craft are landing in the middle of the road, and civilians, they stop their car, they get out, and they look at this thing. And then a few minutes later, there's this high-pitched buzzing noise, and then these things take off, and on the back of it, on the side of it, it has American letters written on it. In some cases, they've seen American flags on these things. So, I think it says a lot. Somebody, somewhere, somehow, they made a propulsion system breakthrough that has nothing to do with liquid rockets, solid rockets, and they left all of us behind. That's what it looks like.
You're singing my tune right here, Michael, because that's what we're here about on Third Phase of Moon is the technology. We deserve it. Yeah. We need to be able to traverse faster. It will be basically time travel if we can move from one point to another in the way these craft do. And it seems the historical archive, like you say, they seem that they're man-made. Not saying that extraterrestrials don't exist or there is some kind of involvement, but it seems that a lot of these encounters are straight up nuts and bolts, human piloted, tubes, piping.
Yeah.
Tell
rivets,
me.
Rivets.
Yes.
Rusty brick rivets fastening these things together. This is what the eyewitnesses are telling us.
We're talking
They're
about this.
seeing rivets on the bottom of these things.
They're seeing the rivets. They're seeing the piping, and I think we were talking about this just a few days ago, right, Michael? About the coolant of this. Tell us what your hypothesis is in regards to the propulsion.
Okay, so this is just my thought, right? So if you look on the bottom of these things, and it's the Hudson Valley Boomerang, it's the Southern Illinois Triangle, January 5th, 2000. You could even throw in Belgium Triangle if you wanted to. All three of these cases, separated by time and distance, have a common denominator. They have a basic foundation where you can build the case from, because this is going right from the eyewitnesses. They're all stating that on the bottom of these craft, they have these pipes and they have these tubes and cylinders and silencers. We talked about it just a couple nights ago. A lot of the witnesses describe this thing as looking like the inside of a Midas muffler plant. That's how they describe this. So it just makes you think, okay, what would these tubes be for, right? Well, if you go back to the Madison Triangle case of 1984, I believe it was, right near Madison, this gentleman described a black triangle, and on the bottom of it, he said it had condensation tubes that ran back and forth, and it reminded him of the back of a refrigerator, where you have these tubes that wrap around, and they do these hairpin turns. That's exactly what this thing looked like. So, put that together, maybe they're using these tubes as some type of a cooling apparatus, and they're pumping liquid nitrogen through there to cool the bottom of these things, because they're actually superconductors, and superconductors only become conductive when they're super chilled down to like minus 279 degrees Kelvin. That would explain these pipes. That would explain what perhaps they're doing. Now, that's just my thought, but if you look at the evidence, that's where it's leading.
You know, I got interesting stuff here, Michael, and the propulsion behind it is very, indeed, the most prominent thing that humans could benefit from. If we could harness this kind of propulsion and give it to the public, I think that's what it's all about. I think that's what people really want, and that's what you're doing. That's what we're doing. We're bringing together the historical and present day information in regards to this phenomenon. Let's talk about present day in 2022. You know, there's a lot of infighting, but then there's a lot of people saying there's big things happening. Do you think our government is going to give us anything? Because there's people on this side that are praising our government officials right now for doing a great job in regards to UFO disclosure.
Well, all I can say is you can bet your bottom dollar that they have not remained stagnant. That's for sure. Whatever was done 20 years ago, I think it's just completely old hat at this point. They're continuing to move the technology forward. Like, if you go back to the 1960s, before these craft depart, a lot of eyewitnesses stated that they heard a high-pitched whining noise, like an electric drill was going off. That's how they described it. This is in the 1960s. So what could we compare that to with a technology that dates back prior to? Well, if you look at a Wimshurst generator and you start powering up a Wimshurst generator, it can make a similar high-pitched drilling noise. So have they implemented that as part of this high-voltage electrical system associated with the power source of these craft? Maybe they're powering these things up with a Wimshurst generator. That's what these people are hearing. So all we have to do is go back to the eyewitness reports of what they're hearing and seeing and apply that to other cases. Then we can get a complete mosaic of what's going on here.
When you look at the big picture, Michael, and I know you've been doing this for decades, a veteran in this field and a lot of connections, and as you're opening up your new YouTube channel, Blue Room Media, what do you think the goal is behind it? What do you think? Do you think it's going to create? Because I know that I'm looking at some of your numbers right now, and it has like 99.9% like ratio. we're up to like 96.7. Don't get me wrong. People, you're not able to see the thumbs down anymore on YouTube. For some reason, they want to suppress that kind of like criticism. We applaud it. We want to see what people want to see, and if they react negatively towards it, we want to know. But apparently, YouTube has issues with that. But right now, through some of the analytics we're looking at on your recent uploads, you're up to like 99.9% likes. I'm looking at like 400 thumbs up comparatively to just one thumbs down. What's that all about? People are digging
That's encouraging. That's very inspiring. See, that's the kind of inspiration that I feed off of. That helps me to continue forward. And I think part of it is due to the fact that I did the boots on the ground legwork and I provided the references so that people can verify it themselves. I think that's part of the feedback.
You know, absolutely. And you can tell it's all about the public. The public decides, not these officials, not people that are in power and the platforms that people control. It's more so this, like you say, ground on the boots reporting, grassroots, you know, and you've been doing it for so long. Guys, we're going to be sharing with you in just a moment some of what Michael's been bringing to the table via Blue Room Media. And we're so happy to be collaborating with Michael Shratt, getting this information out to you. And Michael's got a lot of stuff coming up. So everybody go over to that channel. I'm going to be supplying the original link in the description. And make sure you subscribe to Blue Room Media. And let me tell you, it just got started. He's about to go live, right? Are you about to go live and chat with the people while you present this evidence? You've never done this before, but it's exciting.
I guess we're going to interact even more. That's great. That's fine. Let's do it. Mm-hmm.
People, buckle up. Things are going down. And again, Michael, appreciate you joining us. And let's get to some of his evidence and historical archives that he's bringing to the forefront of ufology. Check this out, guys.
This is a very interesting case. July 13th, 1959, Blenheim, New Zealand. Primary eyewitness was milking the cows at the time, and she noticed emerging from this dark cloud came these eerie green lights. There were two of them. It got a little bit closer, and then she saw that these green lights were coming and emitting from the bottom of a 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. Now, this dish-shaped craft had two counter-rotating rings of flames that were coming out of the outer circumference of the craft itself. We'll move on to the next slide so you can get a better idea of what this thing actually looks like here. So this is a drawing I did a long time ago. Flaming jet UFO, July 13th, 1959, Blenheim, New Zealand. And you can see these tongues of flame coming on the outer circumference of the craft, about 25 feet in diameter, approximately 8 feet tall. And on the upper section of the craft itself, it had this not clear, transparent dome, but it was more of a rectangular dome. And she said that she could see these quote unquote pilots or beings that were wearing these helmets that came down to their shoulders. That's what these things look like. And we'll move on to the next slide here. Now, as it got closer, when the craft got near her vicinity, whatever these tongues of flames were, they stopped. And she noticed that a light turned on and she could see these two beings. One of them actually stood up and kind of pressed his hand and head against the window like he was looking down. And the next thing that happened is one of these beings emerged from the craft. And when we go to the next slide, I'm going to show you what this looked like here. This is what, ladies and gentlemen, the being looked like. It looked like a man. He was kind of wearing this one-piece flight suit that looked like it came from the Mercury space program. That's what it looked like, kind of wrinkled. Now, he had this helmet that came down to his shoulder, and then he had this breathing apparatus connected to 3 tubes that led up to the bottom of the helmet itself. On his left hand that you see here, he had a cone-shaped device. And this is the third time that we've heard about this cone-shaped hand device. Now, when we move on to the next slide, I'm going to give you an idea, a little bit of a blow up here. Again, this is by my good friend, Tom Bogan. Now, he also had some type of an instrument right on his chest, and he had this Pentagon-shaped cutout window with the face of a man. It was definitely a face of a man. And again, this cone-shaped hand on his left side of his body here. Now, he screamed at the primary eyewitness in some type of a language that she didn't know. She couldn't figure it out. The being went back into the craft, and then these tongues of flame started up again, and then this craft flew away at a slow rate of speed. And we'll move on to the next case now. Okay, I dug this out of the QFOS archives. I doubt it's ever been seen before, and we're going to show it to you here for the first time, December 26, 1972. This is Venezuela. All right, let me set this up. So the primary eyewitnesses are on the top floor of their 14th floor apartment complex, December 26, 1972. So you've got the husband, you've got the wife, and you've got their young daughter. Now they're looking off to the east, and they're expecting to see this Convair commercial airliner approaching. But this time, ladies and gentlemen, that wasn't the case. What he actually saw, and he thought that this was a flame within the engine nacelle of the airliner. He saw this interesting, strange colored flame approaching his location. As it got closer, this was no commercial airliner. This was about a 50-foot long elliptical shaped craft that kind of tapered back to the end, and it was kind of saw cut out. It had two half hemispherical domes that looked like insulators, and then separating by about 6 inches, there was these electrodes with this continuous blue arcing spark or electrode between these two half hemispherical domes. Now on the back of this, wrapped around the back and kind of like near 1/3 back from the leading edge of the craft, there were these cast iron exhaust ports with these lasagna noodle flames coming out of them that didn't look like campfire flames, but actually looked like electrical discharges. Now I want to move it ahead to the next slide. I'm going to give you an idea here, drawing of what this thing looks like. So you can see these, I've done this drawing here that shows you these cast iron exhaust ports. We've got the side detail showing you these lasagna noodle flames. Now he said that it almost looked like someone took a butter knife and chopped these things off. So this was no flame. This is more of a electrical discharge. You can see on the bottom of this with these electrodes and these half hemispherical domes. We'll move ahead to the next slide here. I'll give you an idea of what that looked like. So he definitely said that on the bottom of the craft, again, there was this double half hemispherical insulators. Between these, there was this continuous arc, blue light arc going on, like it was some type of a spark gap and kind of a welder's arc. That's what it looked like. Very strange electrical, high voltage electricity, you could say, was going between these. We'll move on to the next slide, and I'm going to give you an idea of what these strange cast iron exhaust ports look like. Can you imagine seeing this? So what this thing actually did is it continued on its flight path. It made a 45-degree angle tip up. It basically missed the buildings, continued on its flight path. But before it did all that, the father told his daughter to go run next door to the neighbor's house to get a pair of binoculars. She brought those back in time, and he looked through these binoculars and got a very detailed look at this craft. So we have his testimony, we have his flight path, we have his original sketch. It's a done deal, folks. This is another one of these historical cases. We'll move on to the next case now. All right. Primary eyewitness. It's November 1994. It's Repton, England. Primary eyewitness is driving down the road. It's early in the morning. Now he sees this diversionary road off to the light that avoids this bridge. So he's going on this road. He looks off to the right, ladies and gentlemen, and he sees this interesting lighted field. And then about, you could say about 20 seconds later, about 70 feet above his head is this strange 60-foot long elliptical shaped craft. It had a notch cut out at the end of it. It had two beaming spotlights out in front. And then, ladies and gentlemen, and this has come up multiple times now, we see these tubes, pipes, and cylinders and muffler devices and silencers. Some people call these things, quote, it looked like it came from a Midas muffler plant. That's what this thing looked like. These pipes and cylinders. Very strange. Now let's move on to the next slide. I'm going to give you the reference for this. And here's the reference for it. It's Burton Daily Mail, England, February 17th, 1995. So just want to give you the sources of where I'm getting this information. I'm not just pulling this out of my hat. We actually do have some references for this. We'll move on to the next slide now. Okay, so this is an illustration I put together, but can you imagine looking up and seeing all these pipes and cylinders and silencers? What is this? What is the purpose of this? Is this a cooling apparatus for a superconductor using liquid nitrogen? It's certainly the possibility, because superconductors only become conductive when they're super chilled down to a very low temperature. So we'll move on to the next slide now. Okay, so 1994, Atoxeter, England. Primary eyewitness is driving down the road. It's early in the morning. He's on his commute, and all of a sudden, his motorcycle conks out of the clear blue. His motorcycle conks out. Next thing he knows, he looks up and he sees a square. And on the bottom of the square, there's these white lights shining down. And then again, this is like the 15th time now, these tubes, pipes, and cylinders on the bottom of the square itself. And he notices as this thing moves off to the side, this is not a square. This is the base of a large pyramid. That's what this thing actually looked like. Now we'll move on to the next slide, and we'll give you the reference for it here. This is another one of these Burton Daily Mail. This is England, March 3rd, 1995. Now I'll give you the backstory. He ended up, by this time, his motorcycle had completely died on him. He had to walk his bike 3 miles back to his home. And when two weeks later, when investigators got to him, one of the investigators was getting ready to pull out one of his silver Zippo lighters because he was going to light a cigarette. And the second he did that, this metal lighter leapt out of his hand and went right to the gas tank. The entire motorcycle was magnetized. So this is a CE1 case, and it's a CE2 case because it had physical effects. And we'll move on to the next slide here. So I went ahead and did some cardstock models that you can see, very simple to build. And if we move to the next slide, I'm going to show you what the bottom of these things actually look like. So again, here's these tubes, pipes, and cylinders with these lights. Is this some type of a nuclear reactor cooling device? This is what we should think about. It looks like someone made a breakthrough. Someone has definitely made a breakthrough. And then we'll go ahead and move on to the next case here in our presentation for today. July 9th, 1995, Grovos Mills, Missouri. Now, there were 4 witnesses that saw this craft. They were in a field. They were younger, in their 20s. What they described seeing is this strange double flying saucer. You could say it had kind of a separating device. It had multicolors around the outer circumference of the craft itself. But what's interesting is that there were these beams of lights or shafts of lights coming down from the bottom of the craft. And then there was these continuous white orbs that were going up and down within these shafts of light. Now, at this point, these witnesses got really afraid and they bailed out of here. They drove away. They actually had one of the eyewitnesses was extremely upset. That witness was brought back to her car. She drove that to a friend's house, and they all agreed to meet at the friend's house later. Now, 2.5 hours later, none of these friends showed up. So she began to get back into her car and was driving to this location where they were all supposed to rendezvous later. That never happened. She ended up seeing, if you look in the back of this illustration, ladies and gentlemen, you'll see this 6-story tall flying triangle that was associated with this craft. Now, was this a mothership for this craft? We don't know. There is a possible secondhand portion of this case that we may go in at a later time, but this is a very significant case because there were 4 eyewitnesses that saw this, and the source for this is the Acton Advisor number 3, 1995. So again, I want to thank you for your attention today. We've considered at least 5 more cases. What are these pipes? What are these cylinders? We need to keep on looking at that. And I want to thank you for your attention, and please subscribe to this channel so we can continue this crusade. Thanks again.
I want to thank Michael Shratt at Blue Room Media for sharing this. Again, The link to his channel is below. Everybody subscribe to Blue Room Media. And if you've captured anything amazing in regards to the phenomenon, upload that video to YouTube. Copy paste that link to my email. We'll take a look at the evidence. Everybody be safe. Blake Cousins. We'll see you next time.